The city was drenched in silver rain, the kind that blurred car lights into soft halos and turned sidewalks into mirrors. Alexander Hale, billionaire and founder of Hale Tech Industries, hurried across the street, his tailored coat pulled tight as the storm picked up. He ducked into the first café he saw, a small, warm place with fogged windows and the smell of roasted beans. The sound of the rain faded behind him, replaced by the low hum of conversation and the hiss of the espresso machine. He shook the water from his hair, ordered a black coffee, and moved to a corner table, glancing at his phone. Messages and figures filled the screen, stock updates, board meetings, merger documents. It was all routine, predictable, safe. Until a sudden burst of laughter broke through the monotony. Two children, a boy and a girl about 4 or 5 years old, were chasing each other near the counter. Their laughter was pure, unfiltered, the kind of joy that didn't exist in his world anymore. The girl's curls bounced wildly as she dodged her brother, both of them wearing matching yellow raincoats dotted with tiny stars. Alexander found himself smiling before he even realized it. Then, a woman's voice, gentle, familiar, cut through the air. "Liam, Lily, stay close. Please." His smile froze. The cup in his hand stopped midway to his lips. He knew that voice. He would have recognized it anywhere, no matter how many years had passed. Slowly, he turned his head. There she was, Emily Carter, his former assistant, the woman who had once been the quiet pulse behind his empire, organizing, planning, protecting him from chaos. The woman who vanished without warning 3 years ago, leaving only a short resignation email and silence in her wake. Her hair was a bit shorter now, framing her face in soft waves. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes, but she looked stronger somehow, more grounded. She was wearing a simple beige sweater, her hands full trying to wrangle the two laughing children. When she finally looked up and saw him, the world seemed to still. Her lips parted, a flicker of shock crossing her face. The color drained slightly from her cheeks. "Mr. Hale?" she whispered, uncertain, as if saying his name might break something fragile. He stood, heart unexpectedly racing. Emily. For a few seconds they simply stared at each other, two people from different worlds bound by an invisible thread of memories. The sound of the rain, the coffee grinder, the laughter of the twins, it all blurred into the background. Emily looked down, instinctively putting a protective hand on the little boy's shoulder. The girl peeked shyly from behind her mother's leg, eyes bright and curious. Alexander noticed the boy's eyes, green, deep, and familiar in a way that made his chest tighten. He didn't know it yet, but in that quiet, rain-soaked cafe, his entire life had just changed forever. The cafe was quieter now, the rain outside easing into a soft drizzle that streaked the windows with silver lines. Alexander sat across from Emily, trying to act calm, though his pulse still hadn't slowed since she'd walked in. The twins sat beside her, swinging their legs under the table and drawing with colored pencils on napkins the waitress had given them. Their giggles filled the pauses that neither he nor Emily could bridge. "It's been a long time," he said finally, stirring his untouched coffee. 3 years, she replied softly, eyes lowered. "I didn't think I'd run into you, not like this." Her tone was polite but distant, the kind of distance built not just by time, but by choice. Alexander studied her face, trying to read what lay behind that calm expression. Once he had known every nuance of her moods, the quiet smile she gave when she solved a problem, the nervous laugh when she stayed late at the office. But now she was a stranger with secrets. "You left so suddenly," he said, his voice carefully even. "No warning, no reason." She hesitated, fingers tightening around her cup. "It was, complicated," she said after a moment. "I needed a change." He wanted to ask more, to demand answers, but the little girl, Lily, looked up then proudly holding out her drawing. "Look, Mommy, it's us," she said, showing 3 stick figures under a rainbow. Emily smiled and smoothed her daughter's hair. Alexander forced a smile. "You're very talented," he said, his gaze flicking to the boy. The boy looked up too. Liam. Same green eyes, same serious look Alexander saw in the mirror every morning. He froze. "Thank you," Emily said quickly, as if to cut off the silence that followed. "They love to draw. Keeps them busy while I work." "You're working again?" "I do freelance design from home now," she said. "It's flexible. Good for the kids." The way she said kids made something twist inside him. He nodded, pretending to sip his coffee. "They seem happy." "They are," she replied, her smile warm and sad all at once. For a moment it almost felt normal. Two old colleagues catching up. But underneath the small talk, the air was charged with something unspoken. Questions hung between them like static. Her phone buzzed. Emily glanced at the screen, frowning. "I'm sorry. I have to take this," she murmured, standing up. The twins stayed behind, coloring quietly. Alexander watched her step outside, framed by the gray light of the rain. When he looked back at the children, Lily was watching him. "Mommy says you were her old boss," she said cheerfully. "You look like our daddy in the picture." Alexander blinked, his breath caught. "What picture?" he asked. But the little girl just smiled mysteriously and went back to her drawing. Outside, the rain began to fall harder again, but it wasn't the storm outside that unsettled him. It was the one suddenly rising inside his chest. The city, lights glowed through the glass walls of Hailtech's top floor as the night deepened. Most of the building was empty, silent, except for the faint hum of computers and the distant echo of rain against the windows. Alexander stood by his desk, staring at the skyline, waiting. He hadn't been able to think about anything else since that afternoon. The words of the little girl echoed in his head. "You look like our daddy in the picture." When Emily finally walked in, she looked uneasy, clutching her purse tightly as if it might protect her. The familiar scent of her perfume stirred something deep in his chest. For a moment, it felt like time had folded back, like they were still the same two people who used to stay late together, sharing takeout and quiet laughter, but the air now carried a weight that neither could ignore. "Thank you for coming," Alexander said quietly, breaking the silence. She nodded, her gaze wandering around the office before meeting his. "You said it was important." "It is," he said. "I need to ask you something about your children." Her breath caught slightly, but she tried to keep her composure. "What about them?" He walked closer, his tone low but steady. "Lily said I look like their father. And she mentioned a picture." Emily's face went pale. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The silence stretched painfully until she finally exhaled and looked down. "Alexander, please, don't." "I deserve to know," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Are they mine?" The words hung between them like a lightning strike. Emily's eyes filled with tears she couldn't blink away. For a moment she seemed smaller, more fragile than he'd ever seen her. "Yes," she whispered. "They're yours." It was like the ground shifted beneath him. He gripped the edge of the desk, trying to steady himself. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to," she said, her voice trembling. "But I was scared. You were at the peak of your career. Every headline, every investor meeting, you had the world watching you. If anyone found out your assistant was pregnant, it would have destroyed everything you'd built. I didn't want to be the scandal that broke you." His chest tightened painfully. "So you disappeared." "I thought it was the right thing," she said through tears. "I didn't want your money. I just wanted to raise them quietly, safely. I wanted to protect them, from your world, from mine." He stared at her, torn between anger, disbelief, and something that felt like heartbreak. "You took away 3 years of my children's lives, Emily. 3 years I'll never get back." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "And I took 3 years of mine too, Alexander. Don't think I didn't pay the price." The office fell silent again, except for the rain. Two people stood in the glow of the city, one trembling with guilt, the other with shock, both realizing that nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sun spilled over Central Park, turning the grass into a field of gold. The air smelled of wet leaves and freshly cut earth, the world washed clean after last night's storm. Alexander stood near the playground, feeling strangely nervous. He wasn't used to nerves. He'd faced billion-dollar negotiations without flinching. But now, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate and a bag of balloons, he felt like a man walking into something fragile and precious. He spotted them, easily. Emily sat on a bench under a tree, her hair tied up, a book in her lap. The twins were a blur of laughter and motion, chasing bubbles through the sunlight. Lily's shriek of delight carried across the park as Liam tried to catch a bubble only, for it to burst against his nose. Alexander smiled, an unguarded, genuine smile he couldn't remember wearing in years. Emily looked up and saw him. For a second, her expression flickered with hesitation, then softened. She closed her book and stood as he approached. "You came," she said quietly. "I said I would," he replied. "I brought these." He handed her 1 cup. "Extra marshmallows. You still take it that way, right?" Her eyes widened slightly before she smiled, small but real. "You remembered." Before either could say more, Lily came running, her curls bouncing. "Mommy, he's here. He brought balloons." Liam followed close behind, his serious little face lighting up when he saw Alexander kneel to their level. "I thought you two might like these," Alexander said, handing each of them a balloon. Blue for Liam, pink for Lily. "Thank you," Lily said, hugging his leg before running off again. Liam just nodded solemnly, though his eyes sparkled as he clutched the string tightly. Emily watched them, her arms folded loosely, unsure whether to smile or cry. "They've never had this," she said softly. "Someone to play with like this." He glanced at her. "They deserve everything. So do you." She looked away, blinking fast. "You don't have to do this, Alexander. You don't owe me anything." He shook his head. "It's not about owing. It's about what I missed. What I can still make right." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the twins chase each other around the swings. Alexander suddenly bent down, helping Lily tie her loose shoelace, then lifted Liam onto his shoulders to help him reach a branch. The sound of their laughter echoed like sunlight. Emily's eyes softened as she watched them. For the first time in years, the guarded wall around her heart began to crack. When Lily tugged her sleeve and insisted, "Mommy, come. Family picture." Emily hesitated, but Alexander extended his hand with a gentle smile. She took it. The 4 of them huddled close, the twins squeezing between them as Lily snapped a photo with trembling fingers. The moment froze. Imperfect, spontaneous, and full of life. And as Emily looked at Alexander, something inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of healing. The city was glowing under the night sky, its skyscrapers reflecting the lights of 1,000 windows. But Alexander wasn't in his penthouse or his office. He stood in front of a small apartment building in Brooklyn, holding a paper bag of takeout and a bouquet of white lilies. The kind Emily once said reminded her of peace. He hesitated before knocking, heart pounding harder than it ever had before, a press conference or business deal. The door opened slowly. Emily stood there in soft house clothes, her hair slightly messy from putting the twins to bed. For a moment, she just stared at him, eyes widening in surprise. "Alexander, it's late. What are you doing here?" He smiled almost shyly, something rare for a man who commanded boardrooms. "I didn't want to wait. I brought dinner." He lifted the bag a little, and she blinked, half amused, half confused. "You brought takeout?" He nodded. "From that little Italian place on 8th. You used to love their pasta." Her lips parted, the faintest smile breaking through her uncertainty. She stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was small but warm, filled with children's drawings taped to the walls and tiny shoes near the door. The kind of home that smelled like love and routine, two things Alexander had never really known. He placed the food on the table as Emily poured tea, her movements graceful but cautious. "You didn't have to come all this way," she said, softly. "I did," he answered simply. "I needed to see you, to tell you something." She looked up, waiting, her expression wary yet hopeful. He took a slow breath. "I made a decision. I'm stepping back from Hailtech." Her eyes widened. "What? But that company is your life." "It was," he said. "But somewhere along the way I forgot what living actually meant. I've spent years chasing numbers, headlines, power, and none of it ever filled the emptiness I didn't even understand until I met those kids." He smiled faintly. "Until I saw you again." Emily's eyes shimmered in the lamplight. "Alexander, you don't have to give up everything because of this." "I'm not giving it up," he said gently. "I'm trading it for something real, for a life that actually means something." Silence lingered between them, soft and tender. Then from the next room came the sound of sleepy voices. The twins padded out, rubbing their eyes. "Mommy? Daddy?" Lily murmured, still half asleep. Emily froze at the word, but Alexander smiled and knelt down. "Hey, you two. Shouldn't you be in bed?" Liam climbed into his lap without hesitation. Lily leaned against her mother, yawning. The quiet hum of the city faded away as the four of them sat there. An imperfect little family, finally together. Emily met Alexander's gaze over the children's heads. "You really mean this?" she whispered. He nodded. "No more secrets. No more distance. I'm home." Outside, rain began to fall again, soft and steady, washing the city clean. Inside, for the first time in years, Alexander felt whole.